Greetings, everyone. This is Hegerherger, and I am here for the final episodes of Season 8 and of the series of Game of Thrones First Impressions. I'm going to go over what I liked, what I didn't like, observations of notes, and general first impression stuff all together. You guys know the drill. As always, I literally just finished watching the episode, so I'm going to go over what I noticed. Although I do have a little bit of a confession to make. I did skip over, should I say, the opening credits over the last couple of episodes, and then I watched them again, but not on the first impression. So, needless to say, I missed the fact that they had the interior of Winterfell destroyed. But I also do like that they have the external, the outer wall of the city of King's Landing that is destroyed in the opening credits. So, kudos for that attention to detail, which is an improvement considering we went an entire season in season 7 with them showing the Baratheon logo in King's Landing when she had declared herself Queen Cersei Lannister, which was always a kind of a point of contention for me, but oh well. Best way of describing King's Landing after the last episode was ash, ash, and more ash. Well, I didn't. I understand why they did it for the sake of laying down rubble and debris and dirtying up the set. But it kind of stuck in my mind. It's like, wow, the streets are remarkably clear. A lot of clutter in the corners, but the streets themselves are clear. And before anybody points this out in the comments, if those had been actually the streets that Dany had strafed, those buildings wouldn't even be there. And while we're still in the streets, one little thing that jumped out at me when they were walking through the streets was the remains of that child. I didn't see whether it was a little girl or a little boy, holding a burnt animal figurine in their hand. It's like, wow, that doesn't scream of Shireen. And I was expecting Davos to actually notice it, but there was no. He didn't even look in that direction. And though it is considering how the rubble fell on them, I do like the fact that somebody was actually able to, this may sound cold, but this is Cersei, able to confirm the kill on Cersei Lannister. As gut-wrenching as it was for Tyrion to, see the death of his brother, and I do feel for him on that. As Tyrion pointed out, she was an evil, evil woman, and actually, I don't think I ever saw her better looking than they're dead. So, I was very glad for that. And the reason why I say it's an impossibility, because somebody who's buried in rubble, they're not going to be, they're not going to be miraculously laying within, 6 inches of the surface. They're going to be at the bottom, and very much squished. When it comes to the post-battle celebration, something that I wasn't really surprised that the Unsullied were, executing prisoners. The culture. The kind of the Unsullied culture is very much obedience to the Queen, and since at this point Dany has obviously gone full Mad Queen Targaryen, it didn't surprise me that she had either given express orders or heavily implied orders to anybody with Lannister colors that they were to be killed. So didn't entirely surprise me. The thing that actually I did find surprising and was going to start off with it before I sidetracked to the Unsullied was the Dothraki. They were behaving themselves remarkably well. We've seen them in the past once they get done with, destroying an area, a settlement with wealth. We saw that when they were hitting when they destroyed the village of the Lazarene in season one. And that's a cultural thing. So that is something that is would be incredibly difficult to kind of break. Um, and here they are. They're behaving themselves. So I found that kind of interesting. The Dothraki with discipline, that's not necessarily a good thing for everybody else. And of course, I did like the way they framed Dany's entrance after she got off of Drogon, and Drogon taking off with the dragon wings spreading out behind her perfectly, making her look quite, well, demonic. And at that point, she kind of gotten there, so wildly appropriate. When she was going off on, that we have won, yay, you have fulfilled your promise to me. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, what now? What is the next step? Where are we headed? The whole, okay, we're done with the war. What now? Now what? Of which she then proceeded to go off in length, describing everything, and I thought to myself, maybe I'm just now becoming a jaded old fart, but nice spin. I mean, it's a bit of a stretch to, walking into a city that has been burned to the ground and think yourself as a liberator. When probably a good half to three-quarters of the population of the city have been slain. You're not exactly liberators at that point. Nice spin. That, of course, rolls into the subject of world conquest. Dany is nothing but true to her nature in this particular point. She is a conqueror. Yes, she has gone batshnig crazy and has gone far off in the deep end, headfirst into the cesspool, but she is a conqueror by nature. Then we come to Tyrion's cell scene, which the parallels here between him and his brother are actually quite remarkable in the fact that they have both spent time being constrained and imprisoned. And I was thinking to myself, just like I did last week, well, Tyrion, you're in a cell. This should be familiar to you. Now, I had an interesting little experience when it came to watching the scene between Tyrion and Jon Aegon. Right when it was starting to get very heartfelt and borderline heartbreaking. It's raining outside where I live, and just as that was happening, there was a really heavy belt of rain that came through, and I could hear it on the roof, and it was, rattling off the windows, and it was just like so perfectly timed. It really lent that perfect touch to the scene. As soon as Tyrion brought up that line, "Love is more powerful than reason," he said that, and then that immediately called to me, "Love is the death of duty," of which they then promptly bring up, and it was that. I believe that it was this conversation that finally got Jon, kind of woke him to necessity. I won't say brought him to his senses. I won't say woke his reason, but I will say, you know, woke him to the necessities of the situation on account of this, because the whole situation it's completely untenable. Um, Daenerys is a foreign conqueror, and the fact that she laid waste to the second biggest and the most important city in the kingdom without batting an eyelid is highly disturbing. And when there's that earlier conversation with Arya, I honestly thought that Arya was going to be the one who did the deed. And because she has always been one of one of the primary people that when it comes to the death of somebody that, Arya is going to do it. She's kind of my default. But I am also not surprised. I'm not really surprised that, Jon was the one who did it, but I'll get to that in a moment. I thought it was really cool that Drogon had curled up in the courtyard and the snow, although for a while I thought it was ash, the snow had covered him up and made a big igloo. And then when he wakes up, it's like I don't know. There was an aspect of watching a dog underneath a blanket wake up. I personally have never owned a dog, but I've seen dogs wake up in the morning, and uncurl and wake themselves out of the blanket and shake themselves off. And so, needless to say, kind of continuing with the whole vibe of Drogon is the family pet, and when Rhaegal and Drogon were watching Danny and Jon, going at it, like the two dogs looking up over the foot of the bed, up at mom and dad. So I very much had that vibe. For longtime viewers and people who have been watching um, since since season one, or even people who've gone back and seen season one, the warlock vision in the House of the Undying, it just screamed when Danny was walking up to the Iron Throne, and having read the books, and though yes, I know the show and the books are two completely separate entities, in the books, she was about to touch the throne when the call of her, and even in the show, just before she touched the throne, in the show, before she touched the throne, it was the distressed call of her dragons that brought her back to her senses. In the books, it was visions of Drogon, and for longtime viewers and people who have been watching since season one, or even people who've gone back and seen season one, the warlock vision in the House of the Undying, it just screamed when Danny was walking up to the Iron Throne, and having read the books, and though yes, I know the show and the books are two completely separate entities, in the books, she was about to touch the throne when the call of her, even in the show, just before she touched the throne, in the show, before she touched the throne, it was the distressed call of her dragons that brought her back to her senses. In the books, it was visions of Drogon and, Drogo and their son that brought her back. And there was kind of a description, if she had, touched the throne, that she would be lost. And I was saying to myself, Danny, if you touch that throne, you will be completely lost. You will be gone. And yes, Well, that bit of foreshadowing definitely did hold true. And then the whole conversation between Danny and John boils down to the they don't get to choose line. And then in the back of my mind, you know, it just screamed, that is not freedom. That is the gateway where good, well intentioned people, of which she was well intentioned at the beginning, that is where they become monsters. And they don't see it, they can't see it, of which she obviously can't see it, but it is plainly obvious to 99% of the people around her that she has become a monster. And then, once they start kissing, I was actually kind of at the end of my ropes. It's like, oh God, John, please, this is getting bad. Please don't chunk. Oh, who stabbed who? I'm pretty sure. Please tell me that I'm right. And of course, with the whole love is the death of duty theme ringing, in the mind of Jon Snow, he ends up basically becoming a queen killer. Although totally and completely justified in this particular case. And that, for those of us who are keeping count, would be the third betrayal. Will this happen in the book? Don't know. There's way too much that is still open and no way to codify anything to make any clear parallels. But I wouldn't be surprised because she is basically she's become one of the villains of the piece in the show, and I don't think it's going to be too far off in the books either. As Danny lay there dying, I kind of thought in the back of my mind, well, as much as I would have loved to have seen Arya do it, this is, when taken more coldly and cynically, this is more of a dynastic thing rather than, the intervention of of an outside force, technically. And then, Drogon reacted very quickly to the death of his mother and then showed up and roared his displeasure. They very much made it look like he was going to roast John, and I don't even think that. And even if John was a dragon, a metaphorical dragon, his chances of surviving direct dragon fire, not all that great. Targaryens died in the Dance of Dragons fighting each other and were burnt, so it's not necessarily always a Targaryen thing. By all indications, Dany was a bit of a fluke, and obviously didn't. It was not something that Jon had. I was hoping that Drogon would actually burn Dany's body, because at that point it would be extremely fitting. The last of the known Targaryens, because at this point the people who know who Jon is, Aegon, the circle is small enough that it could conceivably be kept secret, at this point. And the Targaryen funerals classically are burning their bodies, and then bringing the ashes back to Dragonstone. So Drogon goes, hog wild with the fire, and I'm thinking to myself, burn the throne, of which he did, and it made perfect. There's a great deal of symmetry with that because, well, as we all know, the Iron Throne in the show is a pale imitation to the Iron Throne in the books. You can't really make that prop for a TV show, and that has to use the same sets again and again. It's not a practical prop. It's not something that could be made. It is a huge, huge thing. Not this, very impressive looking Iron Throne in the show, but the Iron Throne was forged by smiths using Balerion, using the Black Dread's flame. And so it was created with Dragonfire, and it was destroyed by Dragonfire, which I thought was very appropriate, and had a lot of symmetry. Showing the end of the Targaryen power over the land, because the Iron Throne was a symbol of the authority over all of Westeros, and the destruction of that throne is the end of authority over the whole of Westeros. Now, when he flew off, taking Dany's body with him, it's like the only thing I could think of is like, I wonder where he's going to set up shop, and I feel very sorry for the people nearby. He could, of course, go back to the burnt out land of Valyria, but there's no. Balerion had a connection to the land. That's where he was born, but Drogon doesn't, so he could literally end up anywhere on the planet. So yeah, and they teased at it that he was seen in the east, and but got cut off before any more explanation of where that was. But I'll get to that in a moment. I don't even know what you would call it, the High Council of Lords at the Dragon Pit, I thought was interesting, an appropriate place, because right now the Unsullied, they don't have a leader. They have a War Master in Grey Worm, but they don't have a queen or somebody that they're serving. At this point, they're a military force without legitimacy. I think the term used today would be a junta, however that's supposed to be pronounced. So I thought that was just something that I noticed. I was looking around at the lords. The new Prince of Dorne was pretty obvious, although he had Martell colors, so I'm not exactly sure who he was supposed to be. I didn't look in the credits. I saw Sweet Robin there, and I was trying to recognize, figure out who some of the other people were, but beyond the obvious of Lord Royce, Yara Greyjoy, Davos, and the known characters. I was looking at the others and going, who could they be, and having absolutely no clue. I feel sorry for Edmure Tully. It's nice to see him after 2 seasons, to know that he actually survived. He puts himself forward to be king, and evidently this is something that he's never ever going to get away from, and he gets smacked down by family again. just like Robb Stark smacked him down for basically exceeding his orders at one point during the battle, the War of the Five Kings. Just smacks him down and puts him in his place. The Blackfish, smacks him down and puts him in his place. And then Sansa smacks him down and puts him in his place. Now, I did like how they dealt with Sam's suggestion. Now, it does make sense that he would put that forward, having been a member of the Night's Watch, and it being a case of it is a democracy, everybody does get a vote, and they are predominantly voting for merit. It's a meritocracy up at the Wall. Because nobody really cares who your father was up there, or what your house is. You're a member of the Night's Watch. Now, he probably would have received been received better if he had pointed it out that this is the way the Night's Watch does things. And they have, successfully dealt with the North for thousands of years using this method. Sam, however, being Sam, not being that forward, I could, yeah, with medieval technology and a medieval mindset, yeah, a democracy is not going to work at all. I mean, it might work for a city council, but it's not going to work on any larger of an area. And the nobles are not in any way going to lower themselves by listening to the commons because they're great houses and so forth. That would need a massive change in mindset that is not going to happen overnight. I did like the final twist of the show and where Bran the Broken is put forward to be king. Don't get me wrong, Bran would be perfect. He has essentially had all sense of ego stripped from him. He doesn't have, there's no petty egos in which to having to contend with, which is a great boon for, the ability of any particular leader over, well, let's be honest, Westeros being a continent. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. I'm also not surprised that Sansa refused to submit to the rule of king. You can't even say the Iron Throne anymore. There is no Iron Throne. The wheeled throne, since Bran is in a wheelchair, the wheeled throne. But if there was ever a point that this that the secession of the North was going to happen, this would be the time. And quite honestly, at this point, if Asha / Yara wanted to secede from the Six Kingdoms now would be a good time for her to do that as well, because you have a leader who is basically amiable to it and is not going to go, well, this is a rebellion, so call the banners. That won't be happening. And when it comes to the whole independence of the North and the First Men, depending on what theories and so forth you listen to and believe in, Rickard Stark was working on this, he was working on this many decades ago, which of course sparked Robert's rebellion, with the fact of his great alliance, including almost everybody north of the Trident, and the Targaryens weakening and becoming feeble as a dynasty. He was working towards, according to these series, he was working towards northern independence, and was just about to be in position when, Brandon and Rickard Stark were, executed by the Mad King. So the Starks have achieved their goal of being a free and independent peoples. And without Jon having to be sit on the Iron Throne or whatever throne, whatever they call it from here on out, he's free. With Bran sitting on it, he doesn't have to do it. So he truly did not want it. He forever had authority thrust upon him, and not wanting it. He didn't want to be Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. He didn't want to be the King of the North. And he sure as hell did not want to be the King of the Seven Kingdoms. So, with Bran being the one elected to do it, Jon is free. It would also be interesting to see the follow-up when Bran passes, when he dies. Is what kind of process are they going to use for choosing the next king? Um, if there is even a king after uh, Brandon the Broken. Um, I mean, I could see it now being well, that's almost like a Kingsmoot, like a Ironborn Kingsmoot, where all of the various people who want to have a claim on, take a shot at the seat where they gather together, and all the council and all of the lords vote. It's There is kind of precedence in it in Westeros history. I can't recall them off the top of my head, and it would take me too long to go looking for the specifics at the moment. But it's not without precedent in in recent Westerosi history. And I know I mentioned it before, either last week or the week before, with the plan of taking the Unsullied to the islands of Nath. Great idea. Not very many of them are going to live past probably the first 6 months, on account of they all will have died of butterfly fever unless they were actually born in Nath, of which some of the Unsullied definitely are. Um, but not all of the Unsullied are, olive-skinned peoples. They are, there are Unsullied who are of the blood of the Harpy. There will be Westerosi. There will be Valyrians. There are, because there are Valyrian slaves. Um, there will be people from the, guys who are from around the Jade Sea, all of that. And if they go to Naath, they're gonna die. Then we start getting into the resolutions of the individual characters. So the first one that they showed was Sir Brienne of Tarth. We see her in the gold armor of the Kingsguard, and since the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard is the one who fills out the White Book, we know that she has been promoted. We also see her later on in sitting on the Small Council. And it's been popularly theorized amongst many content creators and on the forums and so forth, that Brienne will be the one who fills out Jaime's pages, as the little pointed out way back shortly before his death in season 4, that most of Jaime Lannister's pages were blank. Bran does. There's a little bit of whitewashing and romanticizing Jaime's tale, but she predominantly, I will say that she does keep it pretty accurate. Kind of saving his face, after killing King Aerys. I went through and read what she wrote, and the way she wrote it and everything, I would expect nothing less from a member of the Kingsguard. And yes, I know this is a little out of order, but I'm going to do it now and kind of finish, because these two are a matched pair. Sir Podrick Payne of the Kingsguard. I thought that was absolutely hilarious. Well, he seems doomed to forever follow around Brienne of Tarth. But, all things said, there are worse people, to be squired to and then to, have to serve with. So kudos on him. And on the subject of Kingsguard, real quickly, I each Kingsguard, Ares Kingsguard, the Kingsguard for Robert Baratheon, the Kingsguard for Joffrey Hill and Tommen Hill, and then Cersei Lannister. They all looked a little different, and I was wanting to get a good look at the details of what the new armor was going to be for the new Kingsguard, because of a new situation and a new house. Technically, a new house is holding the throne, and I noticed that the new Kingsguard style of armor is the one that Jaime Lannister had made for Brienne. They just gilded it, dusted it with brass or whatever, however they get that particular effect. Because you're not going to make armor out of gold because it's too soft and it's way too heavy. So I like that kind of continuation, that style of armor. I thought was a really nice touch. And then there's Tyrion, whom Bran, of course, made Hand of the King again. So, well, I mean, Tyrion at this point has now been Hand of the King or Queen to 3 monarchs. Okay, acting hand for one, but he really was, he was acting hand and he had all the authority of the hand. So, essentially experiences hand for for Joffrey Hill. Let's call him what he was. And then, obviously, then Daenerys Targaryen, and now Hand of the King to Bran the Broken. I made so many mistakes, and now you will spend the rest of your life fixing them. I like that. When he gets to the council, small council chambers, there was a very interesting feeling when he's sitting there, looking at the empty chairs, and I can guarantee he's here. It's like he's hearing in his mind the ghost of the voices of Grandmaster Pycelle, Littlefinger, and Lord Varys, and any other members of the small council, but they have tended to come and go. But Grandmaster Pycelle, Littlefinger, and Varys were the ones that were always constant during his tenure. It's like moving out when you move out of your house or your apartment. And you go through, and it's just that kind of empty feeling. And you hear the ghosts of past conversations and such. I very much had that particular vibe looking at that scene. Now, when Tyrion, pushes the seats in, it's almost like he's resetting the table. The angled chairs are the ghosts of the last council. And this is the first of the new council. So resetting the seats, straightening them up, putting them in their proper place, it's kind of like a symbolic reset. And then everybody walks in. The fact that Sam became a maester in no way surprises me. I hope he is actually Archmaester for King's Landing, and that maybe he can help fix the rot that is the Citadel at the moment. But He'd always wanted to be a maester, so I'm very glad to see that he got there. Of course, he brings out the book that was hinted at back in what was it, I think episode 2 of season 7. Oh, the wars after the death of King Robert Baratheon the First. Well, it could use a better title: A Song of Ice and Fire. That has been theorized that in with several content providers and so forth, that Sam will be the one who actually writes that many years after these particular events. But the fact that they've mentioned it and everything, I do like it. It's a little bit of a nice little bit of service there. Then we come to other members of the small council. I like the fact that Davos was on there. If quite honestly, if you are ever going to have a small council post this whole business, Davos definitely would be a wonderful voice on it. Being born common, being a flea bottom boy, he has a unique perspective on the world, and a good compass, if you will. Perfect to be on the small council, and the fact that he's master of ships, which makes him the High Lord Admiral of Westeros. Very, very appropriate. And then we come to Sir Bronn of the Blackwater, Lord of Highgarden, and Lord Paramount of the Reach. Okay, I can certainly see, giving him Highgarden. That's a castle, awesome. Making him one of the great lords of Westeros. Well, I mean, there are dreams, there are tales of individuals like this, born common, become a great lord. Okay, I'll give him that. Quite honestly, though, would you trust him with Master of Coin? I wouldn't. Hell no, I would not. I would not trust him with my bank account or my credit cards or anything like that. I think you're going to need. I think what they'll need to do is hire an accountant from the Iron Bank to check his work, because I have a feeling a fair amount of gold is going to disappear. Now, granted, when it comes to collecting money in the crown's name, Bronn, being who he is, he will have no problem collecting either gold or blood from the people that owe the crown money. I just look at when he was in the books, or sorry, excuse me, in the show, when he was commander of the City Watch, where, oh yeah, we just rounded up all the known thieves preemptively. On what charges? Yeah, we came up with something. So he takes that attitude into being debt collection from nobles, commoners, and other entities, if any such entities exist. It will be interesting, blunt, and probably quite violent. If he can keep his hand out of the purse, out of the pot of gold coins, he'll do a good job. But I put that with a big if. I wouldn't trust him with my finances. We appear to be missing the Master of Whisperers. Brand, you are the Master of Whisperers. Seriously, you don't need a Master of Whispers. You have all the ability that you need to be a Master of Whispers. Although, you can only be so many places at once, but I mean, you normally by anybody else's, if I was king, who would I want Master of Whisperers? You. And the fact that you need one on the small council, the the irony, the comedy of it is just wow. As for the rest of the business of the small council, the Tyrion brings up the clean water with working with the sewers, bringing up ports and fleets, which are for the bigger picture are much good. And then there is Bronn, who is Bronn is Bronn, and of course he's going to be missing his brothels. It'd be very interesting to sit in on a small council meeting 5 years in the future and see how this goes with the master of grammar and the master of many lofty titles butt heads with each other. It would be most amusing. And we will never, ever get the punchline of Tyrion's joke. Those bastards. They teased us with it for on and off for 8 years, and they still don't deliver. That's just dickery. I mean, I understand that they can't resolve everything, but that's just dickery. When it comes to the Starks, there were no particular big surprises. As happens so often in power struggles and high crimes, of which breaking one's oath to one's queen certainly qualifies as a high crime. Um, you know, Taking the black is the instant way out. Um, when John was not at the council and couldn't be put forward for becoming king, uh, that really is the best way out and best ending for him. Um, Take this a little bit out of order, but he goes north, he arrives at Castle Black, and then he just keeps on going. He leaves Westeros behind. He joins the Wildlings. As most of the Wildlings will respect Tormund anyway, but they will definitely, regardless of whatever clan they were from or clan, tribe, whatnot, all of them respect Jon, and I can imagine him becoming the unofficial king of the North. He won't declare himself as such, but I have a feeling the tribe leaders and so forth will defer to him and perk up and listen whenever he has to say something. He didn't bother joining the Night's Watch. He just kept on going, and that's where Jon's soul is. His soul's in the North, and I'm glad that his faithful dog was there waiting for him to go north, and it is the best possible resolve for Jon Snow, Aegon Targaryen. The fate of Arya it's been floated around by a couple of the content providers that she was going to sail west. I personally thought she was basically going to become an agent / executioner for House Stark, where she will be more serving the house than she'll be, obviously she's a member of the house, but she'll be in more of a serving mode. But when they said, "Oh, I want to see what is west of Westeros," it didn't come as a real big surprise. It will be nice to think that Arya Stark will be the first one of the first Westerosi ships to come through the to see Ashai through the Saffron Straits, only heading west, not going east first and then coming back, but just coming out of the Sunset Sea. And when it comes to Sansa Stark, no surprise at all that she is Queen in the North. Of course, that's the natural. It's the natural thing, um, with the exception of uh, a few houses that were traditionally very close to House Bolton. The North has always followed the Starks. They have followed the Starks since time immemorial, and I don't see that as something that will ever change. Um, so, the fact that she was crowned Queen of the North, um, I thought that was absolutely awesome. Obviously, the Kingdom of the North and the now six kingdoms of Westeros, I can imagine that they will get along fine. Um, on account of, the two rulers are related. I don't see there being any trouble. I don't see any friction or trouble there. The only trouble that really comes north into the only kind of trouble that came north, up from the southern Andal kingdoms into the north, was predominantly um, before the Targaryens showed up. As I can't remember which one, but it was one of the Reed siblings, whether it was Jonin or Mira, pointed out rather savagely to the Freys that, yeah, there are a lot of Frey knights in the neck. But, since the Freys are gone, I don't see any real trouble happening. And whoever designed the outfits for Sansa Stark, I have to give massive kudos. Those were very nice and badass. Although I did find the circlet crown that she was wearing kind of odd. I'm not sure if it's because it was. I was looking at it, and maybe I was wrong. Comment below. It looked a little off-centered. It wasn't perfectly symmetrical. It was a little asymmetrical. So that is what I have for this episode. As a series ender, I thought they did really well. Um, with something the size and scope that Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire has, you're never truly going to be able to resolve everything because one journey ends, another one begins. And there is no happily ever after. Uh, I noticed that they do not mention the Iron Isles at all. Um, but on the whole, they have, they don't have to resolve everything, but they do have to have some resolutions, and I think they did that quite well. So, considering how far they had to go at the beginning of the season, with the fact that, you had the Night King coming, you had Cersei, and then the very problematic Dany, all of that going on at once. I like this ending. I don't feel wanting at all. So, I it's not perfect, but I think they've wrapped things up as well as they have. Um, I still do intend on putting out some more things like, uh, you know, the Night's Watch. I don't think a whole lot of thought has been given to it, so I'm gonna put my 2 cents and reasoning into it. I still have my tactical review for the Battle of the Dawn. And I still have my tactical review for the Battle of the Bastards and the Battle of Blackwater that I do have every intention on completing. I have been distracted for uh, personal reasons, but I still do intend to work on them. that's really all I have for tonight. If you've liked what I've presented so far, give me a like and review, and a subscribe if you really like my stuff. And I'll see you at my next video.